All right, welcome back. I hope everyone had a great lunch out there. The bellies are full, no hangries going on anymore, but we have two speakers left for HOTHCon 2022, and we're going to kick it off with Dale Bertrand talking about purpose-driven SEO. Dale is an SEO specialist. He's worked for multiple Fortune 500 companies and venture-backed startups all around the world for going on 2 decades now. His clients include global brands such as Citizen Watch, Nestle, Raymond Weil and Bulova. Excuse me, I still got lunch going on. He speaks at a bunch of different industry conferences, which, funny enough, I just saw you, Dale. You're going to Traffic and Conversion out in San Diego this year. You're speaking there. I will see you there. I'll be at that one. So excited to listen to you talk, and I'm going to turn this over to you. Go for it.
Awesome. So everybody can hear me, see me, see the slides, all that good stuff.
Great.
All right, great. All right, so we are ready to go. So today I'm here to talk about my favorite subject, which is SEO. So if you're interested in SEO, you're in the right place. But for everybody attending this session today, I assume that you've spent some time developing SEO content. So I'm going to ask you a quick question here, and I want you to put the answer in the chat so I can see what you guys are working on. But I'd like everybody to put in one thing that you do or you've done to optimize content for SEO. Put it in the chat so I can see what you guys are doing. And it could be anything from keyword research to optimizing metadata to writing high quality content to give people some ideas there. But I'm curious if anybody does anything for SEO when you're working on content. We have an answer around high quality content with intent. That's great. Anything else? Is there anybody else who wants to share anything? Going once, going twice. So we've got a bunch coming in here, tracking EMV score, putting keywords in the right place, and then more keyword research to understand search intent, and then also take a look at keyword difficulty. These are all great things. These are SEO practices that make a lot of sense and we should continue. But what I want to point out is that these are not the biggest lever that you have when it comes to optimizing for AI search engines. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So when we're talking about SEO, what we're really talking about is optimizing for Google. We all know that Google handles the vast majority of web searches today, and Google's algorithm is getting more complicated with the introduction of AI. And we want to make sure everybody's muted because we have some feedback in the audio here. And also, we all know that there's more competition than ever when it comes to getting top rankings in Google. So Google's opinion of your content matters because Google can potentially drive vast amounts of traffic to your content. And that's the promised land. That's where we're all trying to get to. So what does this all mean for marketers and content writers? What it means is that we need better SEO strategies to keep up with Google as they get even better at AI, and then also to keep up with your competition. And crafting better SEO strategies really starts with understanding where Google's been with their algorithm and where they're headed. So first thing we're going to talk about here is the Google founders. So when the Google founders created the first version of their algorithm, they were in grad school. And because they were in grad school, they were keenly aware of how academic scholars are evaluated. And academic scholars are evaluated in part based on the number of times their academic papers are cited by other scholars. What that means is if you're a scholar, you write a paper, you're going to have references at the bottom of the paper. And those are the articles that you read that influenced your thinking. These are the most influential articles that you found useful to you when you were doing your research. So the most important and influential academic scholars are the ones who have their papers most frequently cited by other researchers. So the Google founders decided to apply this concept to the web. So on the web, instead of a list of citations at the bottom of every page, we have clickable links. These are clickable hyperlinks to third-party content, third-party websites. And Google's original algorithm was based on the observation that the best content is going to have the most links. And the best content would have links from the most authoritative websites. So Google's original algorithm was rules-based. This is an oversimplification for sure, but it was rules-based. And these rules were intended to determine the best content on the internet so that this content would rank high above all the other content when people are searching. And today's algorithm that Google's rolled out based on AI is just much more complicated because it's AI-based. And because it's AI-based, it's not the rules that we care about when we're optimizing our content. What we really care about is how Google is training its AI, because the training is how Google's AI is making its ranking decisions. And this has huge implications for how we optimize our content to attract more organic traffic. So when we're thinking about Google's algorithm, Google's using AI in many different ways. So Google's using AI to crawl the web, to figure out what pages on your website it's going to crawl and how often, and what pages Google might decide to ignore. And then also Google's using AI to understand the intent behind keywords. So what is somebody really searching for? What would satisfy their keyword? What would they click on in the search results based on the query? And then Google's using AI to determine which websites should rank at the top of the results for each individual query. Now, when we're thinking about like Google's AI and how Google's using AI, it's not one monolithic AI brain that like the Google engineers have built. It's really what they've done is they've pieced together a number of different AI algorithms to build their search engine. So they'll have things like AI classifiers. These are algorithms that will determine things like, is a page a product page or is it an article page? Is it an event listing page, or is it a page that's safe for work or not? These are, in many cases, they're binary classifiers, and these are AI algorithms that Google's using. Google's also using AI natural language processing. So natural language processing for Google is all about determining what's the real intent behind a query. So what is somebody searching for? What type of content should Google show that would satisfy this query and make them happy? And then another AI algorithm that Google's using is deep learning. Deep learning is used to predict like which results Google should show, like what would you click on, what would you be happy with. Another area where Google's using deep learning is for image recognition and basically image search. So why is AI better? The AI algorithms are better for Google because they deliver better results. When I use Google, for the most part, it works, and that's why I go back to Google. And then AI algorithms are learning algorithms. As people interact with the search engine based on what you click, and then also when new keywords like new terms and concepts might appear on the web, these are keywords that Google's never seen before, the algorithm can learn. And when Google sees new content, the algorithm can learn. And AI can operate at scale. So we're talking billions of pages on the web. And the AI algorithms are faster to update because Google can update them by basically giving new training data, new content, and watching search behavior, which is a lot easier than actually tinkering with the code. And then you could also, Google also often changes its training. Will build a new training set or change the way it's building its training set. And that's an easier way to like update the AI algorithm. And then the AI algorithms can be trained by humans, which is important. Like humans aren't determining the search results, but they are looking at web pages and figuring out and basically training the algorithm for what to look for and what types of pages to rank well. So getting a little deeper into training Google's AI, the first thing is that Google's engineers need to identify the signals. These are the things that the AI is going to see. The AI is going to see the content on the page, the metadata, the backlinks to the page, how fast the page is loading, and a number of other things. So this is basically choosing the signals that the algorithm is going to see. Then from there are humans that get involved. Now, remember, the humans aren't deciding where your web pages or where your content is going to rank, but the humans are looking at websites and pages and content and determining like, how trustworthy is this page? Is this content well written? Is it authoritative? Does the author have credibility? And then building a huge training set. And that's what Google's AI is looking at. And it's important to keep this in mind, because what this means is that Google's AI, it's not using rules that some engineer made up. Instead, it's really making decisions the way a human would at scale across billions of searches and billions of pages. Imagine a librarian that's familiar with every market, every niche, every nook and cranny of the web, and can basically take a look at every single piece of content and decide which is the right one, which is the most authoritative, which has credibility, which author is associated with institutions that have authority and credibility, and all of that. And that's what the AI is doing, and that's what the humans are doing. Well, what the humans are doing is building a training set so that the AI can make better decisions, like a human would if a human could operate at that scale. And then next, Google is monitoring your search behavior. So Google's AI, just as part of the data that's using to build search results, is looking at, well, when somebody enters a query into Google, which page do they click on? And when they click on that page and they go to the website, do they bounce back? Will they bounce right back to Google? Possibly because they didn't find what they were looking for. So Google's watching us when we search, keeping track of our search behavior on a query by query basis, and calculating all this data on a relative basis. There are content niches like recipes, where people will go to the site and maybe they bounce back, so that we would expect high bounce rates with that type of content. And then there's other content niches like maybe service pages for B2B websites, and where we would expect people, if the content in the website is good, they go to the website and they stay there. So Google's measuring search behavior, things like click-through rate on the search results page, whether people click on your results, and then bounce rate for your pages, and relative to your competition for the same keywords and the same type of content. So quickly into my background. So I've worked at the intersection of technology and marketing my entire career, and I've studied AI in grad school. And I built a supercomputer for the NSA here in the States, if folks are in the States. And that's a story best told over a beer if we ever meet up at a content or SEO conference. And for the last 15 years, I've been working on digital marketing strategy, and I founded Fire and Spark, which is the agency that we currently work at. My agency, Fire and Spark, we do SEO all day, every day. So that's what we're about. And we work with a bunch of clients, some of which you may have heard of. So Google has a dual mission, and it's important to really keep this in mind. So the first is to understand the world's information. And this is the part of their mission that helps us all. Like, I use Google because it works. I can find what I'm looking for, and Google's really good at it. But Google has a second mission that we need to keep in mind, which is that Google wants to thrive as a business. This is the profit motive. This is the economic motivations that Google has. And what this boils down to is that, how does Google achieve its dual mission? And the answer is happy searchers. So if I can find what I want, and consistently with Google, I'm going to keep going back, that'll give Google the resources it needs to improve its search engine and make me even more happy when they apply those searches to the engine. But just as important to them as a business is that if they can make searchers happy, searchers come back, and searchers view more ads, and they can sell more ads, and they make more money, and the Google founders can buy another 747 jet to maybe ride in tandem with the jet they already have. So the big takeaway is you have to have the most trustworthy and useful content in your market. And the way you get there at the end of the day is what I call customer intimacy. So the better you know your customers, the more likely you'll be able to write content that is useful to the customers that you're targeting when they're making a buying decision. And the thing to keep in mind, because of Google's AI is so sophisticated, and the training that they're doing is in depth and works really well, especially with the panel of humans that are grading websites. If you can write content that really is useful to your customers when they're making a buying decision, Google will surface that content. Google knows what they're looking for, and we're not relying on technical tricks anymore. This is the reason why I asked you what you're doing for SEO up front. Like targeting keywords makes sense, and you should still keep doing it. But really thinking hard about understanding what customers are searching for and building content that's useful to them is even more important nowadays, because Google's AI is so sophisticated and good at what it does. So I'm going to illustrate that with a couple of examples. I want to talk here about the evolution of Google's algorithm. So in the early days of search, think like 20-15 years ago, you would type a query into Google search engine, and what Google was doing was trying to find those words on a page. If you typed in Dale Bertrand because you're a Dale Bertrand fanboy, fangirl, and you want to find out more information about me, Google's basically just going to find pages with my name on it. And Google will rank those pages by PageRank, which is the rules-based algorithm based on links. And that was the early version of Google's algorithm. Nowadays, because Google's an AI search engine, Google understands the words in the query. And it's not just going to look for those words on pages. Google's going to look for content that is basically aligned with the intent behind those words. And Google is going to include things like, the context of what I'm searching for, because Google's going to understand what I had searched for just a few minutes ago and put it in that context. Google's going to understand misspellings and just search for the correct spelling. And Google's going to understand the intent behind the keyword. And then Google's going to choose results that satisfy that context. If I'm searching for football teams and then I go to Google and I just type in the word Jaguars, Google's not going to show me pictures of animals because there's context. Google knows that I'm into football and I'm actively searching for football teams. So Google's going to show me the Jacksonville Jaguars football team because Google understands the context. And Google understands the intent behind the query if based on what I'm searching. And then also Google's AI is going to rank pages based on the searcher's needs, because Google has a much better understanding of what people want to click on and what they will click on and what will satisfy their query. And Google's AI will learn from interactions with the search results like we talked about. So here's an example. You can simulate what I'm talking about by going to Google and typing in quotes something like, what is go time? When I type in quotes around the query, what that directs Google to do is to look for those words on a page. And what Google's showing me here when I did it, when I typed in what is go time with quotes around it, is Google showing me two pages that have the words what is go time on the page and in the title. And that's how early search engines work. If I type in that same query now without the quotes, now I've given Google license to basically determine the intent. What is Dale really looking for? And what Google does, what's showing at the top is go time is your event night dashboard. So Google thinks, oh, well, Dale's actually looking for this software called go time, and it's giving me information about it. So it's giving me information about the software go time, even though that word might not exist, very often on this page or in prominent positions or in the H1 or the things that we would normally optimize. So think about that. And then also Google's thinking, well, maybe he wants to understand what go time is. I'll show him the Urban Dictionary definition. And then there's more answers down here in the people also ask box. Like Google's thinking, maybe the searcher is looking for where did go time come from? Or what is the meaning of due time? Now, this is interesting because Google's thinking, well, maybe that was a misspelling. Maybe Dale was really looking for due time. So what does it mean to due time? Go to prison. And then the last one on here is, what does go back in time mean? So Google thinks, oh, maybe that's what he was really looking for. So what you see is nowadays, instead of just looking for pages that have those words, Google's trying to give us an answer. Google's giving us diversity because Google's not entirely sure what I'm searching for. Google's giving us a number of different answers to different misspellings and more based on Google's understanding of what the intent might be for this particular query. So I also want to talk about what I call the dual content strategy. And all that really means is that when we're creating content for SEO, we're going to create two types of content. One is keyword targeted content. These are the pages that we want to rank. when our customers are searching for specific information when they're making a buying decision around the product or service that we sell. So these are these are the pages that will be keyword targeted. The other type of content we want to build is authority building content. These are pages that will generate backlinks or engagement, or we'll use to demonstrate content partnerships or relationships that we're using to build our authority with Google. And it's important to realize that it's great if these can be the same content, but usually that's hard. So we'll create keyword targeted content separately from our authority building content. And I'll give you here a quick example. There was an SEO project that I worked on, and this was a project for a company that makes commercial grade, expensive, these are like $500,000 or $1 million 3D printers. And these 3D printers, what we found is, like, when we're creating content for people who are typing in things like commercial grade 3D printers, or somebody might be typing in professional 3D printers. There's just not a lot of ways to get backlinks to this content, or really get people to engage with it. But we still need to create this content because we want this content to rank when people are typing in those keywords. So instead, what we did is we created a whole different type of content on the site. And it was content that was targeting 3D printing hobbyists. These are people who would be building their own machines, writing their own software for their 3D printers. And what that allowed us to do was to generate backlinks to the website in this 3D printer hobbyist market. Because with these 3D printing hobbyists, that was an ecosystem where it was easier for us to get backlinks and engagement with the website. There were more of these people. And if we wrote about issues that they cared about, we could get them to link and engage with the content, and even contribute quotes, contribute content, all of that good stuff. So this is an example of the dual content strategy. One type of content to go after keywords for these expensive 3D printers, and another type of content that we're creating to generate backlinks and engagement and content partnerships to basically raise our authority. Now, when we're talking about multi-factor authority, I want to give another example in the form of a story here. So this is a project that we worked on. It's Fire Department Coffee. Fire Department Coffee is a coffee brand with a kick. So it's great tasting coffee with high caffeine. Now, it was created by the founder, Luke Snyder. Luke Snyder's a really awesome guy because he was a Navy veteran. And when he transitioned out of the Navy, he decided to work as a firefighter, to join the fire services. When he was working in the fire services, he was looking for coffee with a kick that tasted great. He couldn't find it. So he created his own. He basically brewed a batch of coffee and he sold it to a few firehouses in Detroit. And when he sold it, he gave away the proceeds to a camp for burn victims. So the important thing is that this coffee brand has always had a passion for giving back. Nowadays, they're doing really well. Last year, they did $10 million in coffee. And what I think is most impressive about this brand, the fact that they were able to get up to $10 million after 3 years of being in business, is that Luke continued to work as a full-time firefighter all through the end of last year. So he got this brand up to $10 million a year while working for a full-time as a firefighter, and continuing the entire time to give a percentage of his proceeds to help the families of injured firefighters. There's a number of charities that they actually give the money to, but the goal behind the brand is to help the families of injured firefighters and other first responders. So what's super important about their brand is that, like, what Google saw at the end of the day that allowed them to gain rankings and do really well in search was that they were a brand that was building momentum. And what I mean about that is their marketing strategy, it wasn't like they took the money that other brands would put towards online advertising or PR or a number of other strategies, and he put it towards telling his story. He has an awesome story. Luke has a story that resonates with anybody who's a first responder or a firefighter, or anybody who cares about injured firefighters or first responders, or even also he's gotten a number of links and mentions and content partnerships in the military veteran community too. So what he's able to do is tell his story as a veteran and a firefighter, aggressively building a brand that cares, that gives back to first responders. Telling that story was able to get him amplification and mentions among influencers in his space. One of the influencers that has been promoting them ended up investing in the business, and that was a really profitable partnership for them. So what Google saw at the end of the day that helped improve their rankings and grow a good amount of organic traffic was what I'm calling multi-factor authority. Multi-factor authority isn't just backlinks, although backlinks are important and they help. It's also engagement and mentions and product reviews in Google search and content collaborations and third-party endorsements. This is what Google saw, and this is what Luke was able to build by telling his story in content and then doing some promotion around that content. So when I talked to Brad Flaherty, Brad Flaherty is the CMO of Fire Department Coffee. I asked him why they did so well and how they did so well with SEO. And he said, Dale, and this is a quote, "The connection with our community is definitely key to our SEO success." And if you think about that, he didn't say core web vitals or keyword placement or even keyword research. And I'm sorry, I do a lot of keyword research, but that's not what he said. He said it was the community that they built around their brand. And the reason why is because what I'm talking about here around multi-factor authority, where Google saw the backlinks and the content partnerships and the content that they were building that was getting engagement from the community of first responders, that they basically built around this content. So Google's AI is tuned to find brands that resonate with online consumers. And that's what Fire Department Coffee was able to do to get the rankings that they got with the content that they built. Now, another example, and this is an example in the B2B software space. Zverse is a company, they build software that manufacturing companies can use to optimize their manufacturing processes. And what they did during COVID was they launched a campaign that they called the campaign to protect 1 million frontline workers. And what they did was they were giving away face shields. And this was at a time when it was really hard to find masks and face shields, and healthcare workers were desperate to find these products, these personal protective equipment, PPE. So they were giving it away, and they've created a few articles about what they were doing and a campaign page, and they were able to promote that content to nurses unions, healthcare facilities, and they got promotion, backlinks, engagement around this campaign. And when they were reaching out, they weren't saying, help us promote our software or reach out to it because we have awesome content. They were saying, reach out because if you're like-minded, like if you want to help us protect frontline workers, then you should be linking to this campaign, you should be mentioning it, and you should do a content partnership with us because you care about frontline workers and you're like-minded like we are. So that's a hugely successful pitch. And what it does is it avoids what you would normally expect when you're promoting your brand or your product or your service or your content, which is that a lot of times when you're reaching out to influencers, they respond with a rate card. They want you to pay for that level of promotion. But if you're like-minded and you've got a mission behind the content that you're creating, then you can get that amplification if you find like-minded individuals and organizations without paying for it. And that's how we do SEO nowadays. Another example is a company that sells materials to jewelers. They're B2B because they sell to jewelers. And instead of putting their money towards online advertising and PR and all that kind of stuff, they put their advertising dollars behind a grant program where they give money to up and coming jewelry designers. These are new jewelry designers who are just getting started, who can use some cash to kickstart their business. And what that allows them to do is it allows them to promote their grant program instead of their products. That gets them in the door when it comes to jewelry companies and industry trade groups and all that good stuff. And once again, Google sees the mentions, the backlinks, and they can do content collaborations around their grant program. And that has worked well for them to build their authority that gets the keyword content that they're generating, gets it to rank. So the company you keep is important. So Google wants to see that your brand, your website, your content is associated with authoritative individuals and organizations. If maybe you're selling a product or you're writing about something in the healthcare space, Google wants to see that you have content partnerships or relationships of some kind with authoritative individuals or organizations like the Mayo Clinic, or maybe an MD with letters after his or her name that that might be reviewing your content or writing your content. One trick that we use is it's hard to find a doctor who write your content, so we find doctors who can review content. If we can get an MD and pay them for 1 hour they can review 10, 20 pieces of content that we wrote, and we can list them on the website as the reviewer. And that allows us to associate the brand and the content with an MD that has relationships and maybe an appointment at a medical school or something like that. But this is the company you keep as a brand, and that will help you when it comes to your Google rankings. And then another example here of the company you keep. What we do is we're looking for content partnerships. So whatever industry you're in, these could be industry trade groups or maybe events that you're involved in. And we like website trust factors. So what can we put on our website that is an artifact of a relationship that we might have if we're selling a product in the education space with an educator or a school or a university. It could be a logo, it could be a piece of content, it could be a quote in a piece of content. And we would love for those trust factors to be reciprocal, because anybody can put a logo on their website. But if Google can find a piece of content or a quote or a logo on your website and the other company's website, then that's an affiliation that will help you to grow your authority. So now I'm going to talk about crafting SEO strategy in 2022. What we used to think about a lot for SEO was what I call bottom-up strategy. So these are things like, I'm creating a piece of content. How fast is this page going to load? What's my metadata going to look like? Do I have canonical tags? Is it an sitemap? And this stuff is still worth doing, but it's not the right way to think about SEO nowadays. And the reason why is because it forces you to put emphasis on factors that aren't necessarily going to help you at the end of the day. All of that stuff is worth doing and definitely SEO best practice, but you're going to get more bang for your buck if you think about your SEO in the context of a top-down marketing strategy. So if you think about Fire Department Coffee as an example, their top-down marketing strategy was to tell their founder's amazing story of what he accomplished in the military, and then when he transitioned into the fire services and built this amazing coffee brand that has supported so many families that were in need. That's an amazing story. That's a top-down marketing strategy. And once you've got that in place, a strategy that is aligned with your brand, then what content marketing are you going to do? Maybe you're doing events. What content are you going to develop? How are you going to promote it? How are you going to build authority using that high level strategy? What PR are you going to do to your website to build authority, to the content that you're building that's aligned with this high level marketing strategy? And it also allows you to integrate your content across the organization when you're thinking first about high level marketing strategy, because you're building content not just for SEO, but content's useful for sales enablement and email marketing and PPC campaigns, and it goes on and on. So nowadays it's more important than ever that we start with a top-down SEO strategy that allows us to think about what targeted content are we creating, what keyword content are we creating, what authority building content are we creating, and how are we building the multi-factor authority that Google is looking for us to earn rankings. So now I'm going to talk about purpose-driven SEO, which is the biggest tool that I have in order to accomplish what I've been talking about today. So you can do purpose-driven SEO in a number of different ways. You can have a mission behind your content that's aligned with your brand. It could be product-driven SEO, where there are companies that you care a lot about how their products are made or how their ingredients are sourced. I worked with a company that sells all wool products, and they're very opinionated about how the wool is harvested from sheep and how the sheep are treated. And there's an SEO strategy behind that. or it could be story driven. If you think about the story behind how Luke started Fire Department Coffee, or maybe the story behind other brands that we might be familiar with. And I'm going to give some examples here. Here's an example of mission-driven SEO. This is an online publisher that I love. I love them because they're an e-commerce website that does really well with SEO. And this is the type of e-commerce website that I would build if I decide someday to build an e-commerce site. The reason why they do so well with SEO is because half of their website is product pages where they sell things like kits to fix your home electronics, or guides that give you information on how to repair electronics. That's half their website. The other half of their website is advocacy for an issue that they really care about, which is the right to repair. They call it the repair revolution. And what that is that they're saying every electronics company should release enough information about their products and their software that you could fix it at home if you choose to do so, or you could bring it to an independent repair shop. I know that for me, with my Apple devices, my iPhone, my laptop, if I bring one of those devices to the Apple store for a repair, they're going to confiscate my entire wallet, swipe all my credit cards, and make sure I'm poor when I walk out of there, because Apple likes money, and somehow they like my money. But what they want to do is make sure that I can bring it to an independent repair shop. The reason why they do so well, iFixit with SEO, is because they've been able to build content around the right to repair that gets engagement and backlinks and mentions among other advocacy groups and anybody out there, publishers that care about this particular issue. And if you look at their website and their backlinks and their engagement, like, they're doing really well. But it's not the keyword targeted content that's doing well. It's this issue oriented content that's doing well, but it makes all the other content rank. Anybody who's written content or tried to optimize an e-commerce website, you'll know it's hard to get to optimize product pages and build authority for product pages with backlinks. So they chose another strategy, which is working really well. That's why I want you to keep in mind this dual content strategy. For them, the keyword focused content are the product pages, and then this advocacy content is the authority building content. Another quick example is a candy brand we work with. It's a product-driven SEO strategy. They built content that is designed to help other food companies understand that they too can source organic, natural ingredients without increasing their costs. And they were able to build out the partnerships around that and build their authority for SEO around specific authority building content that they're building. And then story-driven content. This is a company that I advised. They're a manufacturer. All they build is Velcro straps. And these straps are important if you're installing wires in a building and you don't want it to be really messy. The campaign that they built was called the Campaign to Recruit the Next Generation of Electricians. And the way they came up with it was, we found out just from talking to them that, even though they weren't doing very much with SEO, one of the founders of the company was volunteering at trade schools on nights and weekends because he really wanted to help young people get into the trades, because those are good jobs, like electrician and carpentry and plumbing. They're good jobs that just aren't sexy and young people don't know about them. So that's what he was excited about. So we said, well, wait a minute, why not wrap your brand around this? So they were able to create that campaign and promote that. They were able to get links and mentions from like-minded organizations like electricians unions and carpenter unions, and also one group that was advocating there. It was basically an organization that helps previously incarcerated youth find jobs. And these are the types of backlinks when it comes to building authority for your content. These are the types of backlinks that you don't normally get when you're doing SEO campaigns, because you're not going to normally get a link from like a carpenters union or something like that from your content. So why should your SEO have a purpose when you're creating content? Because you're going to engage your customers. It allows you to do outreach where you're promoting your mission. So you're more likely to get positive responses to your outreach. And you can connect with industry groups that care about what you care about. Imagine a purpose behind your content that has to do with an issue in your industry related to your products or your customers, or some regulatory issue. That's going to allow you to it's going to allow you to do syndication to like trade groups in your industry or other folks that care about your market. And it's going to allow you to get amplification and mentions from influencers that care about this particular issue. And you're going to be able to get partnerships, and we're usually focused on content partnerships, where maybe you're just asking for a quote for one of your articles, but then you're not just creating content, you're creating connected content, because you've got a quote, you might be able to get a link from this content partnership. But in order to do that, it really helps to have a purpose or a mission, so you can find like-minded individuals and organizations, so you can build out that connected content for content partnerships. And your mission does not need to be a social mission. If your brand is interested in climate change or whatever else it might be, feeding hungry kids, there's nothing wrong with feeding hungry children. In fact, it's a good idea. But you might decide that you want to focus on your founder's backstory, or the craftsmanship behind your products, or how your products are built, or how your customers are treated, or your employees are treated. Or you might want to lead your industry, because like I said, there might be an issue, a regulatory issue, or a problem that your customers are facing, where you could lead the charge and create some content around it, build some partnerships and create some engagement, or adopt any hot topic that related to the products or the services that you're writing about with your content. The important thing is that you choose a purpose that is authentic to the company that you're writing content for, the brand that you're working with, and it's compelling to the influencers and organizations that you want to partner with, and the influencers that you want to get amplification from. This is a type of content that I'm talking about that you create. I call it citable content, where once you choose a purpose, you're crafting content that like-minded individuals can use to advance their cause. So think of the example of iFixit, where they're creating content that other advocacy groups that care about the issue they care about can point to. And that's how we get amplification and backlinks for authority when we're building content. So this purpose-driven content can be things like interviews. We did a project where we were interviewing immigrants in the US, and some of them were telling positive stories, some of them were telling negative stories, but these interviews got amplification from groups that were advocating on behalf of immigration and immigrants in the US, because we were creating this original content. It could be proprietary data that you're writing about that like-minded organizations might want to point to or pick up or syndicate your content. Or it could be surveys or position articles or opinion that you're writing for your content to get that syndication or engagement. And then when you're doing purpose-driven outreach to promote your content, you want to pitch the purpose, not the content, not your products, not your service. Pitching your product, your company, your service, your brand, that's the old school way of doing content promotion. And then pitching the content, because the content is so great. And I'm sure everybody listening to this, you're good writers and you create guides that are super useful and content super useful, but that's old school and doesn't work as well. Like I said, they're usually going to ask for money nowadays. So instead, we pitch the purpose, and we're going to need to research like-minded individuals and organizations in order to do it well. But that's how we're going to get the amplification and get them to share and do syndication and all that. So quickly here, I only have a couple more slides. When we're doing purpose-driven SEO, getting started with it, the first thing we do is we find partners. Like, who are we going to want to work with, so we can understand what are the hot topics in this space. Then we're looking for a purpose. Like, what issues do we care about that would align with the brand that we're working for? We need to choose one that would align with the values of the organization we're working with. Then from there, we're building the citable content. This is like I talked about interviews or proprietary data content. And then we're creating this content, publishing it, and we're connecting with like-minded individuals for amplification. These are individuals or organizations that would amplify it because they care. So what we're hoping to build here is an SEO flywheel based on our content. So first, we're building the citable content that I talked about. And when you do that, you can't help but make it easier to connect with like-minded individuals And when you're connecting with these like-minded individuals and organizations, it's going to make it easier for you to grow your audience and your organic visibility using your content. And when you do that, you can't help but to develop new content partnerships because it'll be easier. And when you've done that, it makes it easier to build the citable content because you have content partnerships to leverage for syndication or quotes or interviews or whatever you're doing. Or maybe you're sharing data, or maybe you're using their writing resources. But it becomes this virtuous cycle of an SEO flywheel that allows you to build better content for authority building and content partnerships and syndication opportunities as you go. And last slide here, this is just another piece of content that might be useful to folks who are on this call. If you text the word authority to 66866, you'll get my Authority First SEO Strategy Resources Guide. And what this has is more case studies, the emails we use, the content that we create, and all of that goodness, and software that we use, and all of that good stuff. I am going to turn it back over to the moderators here for some Q&A.
Well, thank you. Thank you. That was awesome. You got into some really cool stuff there that even working in SEO, I learned quite a bit there. So go ahead, throw any questions in the chat there. Let's see what comes through. While those are coming in, I did have one question and comment, I guess more so. I really liked the one part you were talking about, the high-level, super expensive printers that you were trying to build content for, and then you guys kind of pivoted. So instead of trying to gain backlinks from such a super niche, specific thing, you actually opened it up to 3D printing hobbyists. And that's interesting. I never thought about that. You don't necessarily need to be getting backlinks from your ideal customer or your target market. You just need backlinks in general, correct?
Yes. So I want to, because I'm working up against some SEO orthodoxy here. So yes, it would be better if your backlinks were perfectly relevant and you were getting backlinks to the keyword targeted content that you want to get to rank. But that's not always possible. Right. So second best is the dual content strategy. And you want to make sure that the content that's getting backlinks is as relevant as possible to the content that you're trying to get to rank. If it's completely something different, then yeah, that's kind of off the reservation. But the example that I gave is a really good example because it's pretty darn relevant. We're talking about 3D printing hobbyists versus 3D printing professionals. Right. And it worked really well. The thing that we were able to do going after the 3D printing hobbyists was to actually do user generated content where they were generating a bunch of content. The audience was the community that we built around that brand, which made it even easier for us to generate content because we didn't have to write it all. Right.
Well, cool. I have one other one too. You talked a lot about purpose-driven content. Obviously, we have a conference full of content creators, so I love that. But my inner marketer wants to know, what are some of your favorite, what are some of your most effective ways to take the SEO power that piece of content has generated and pass it down to your money pages, whether it's product pages, hubs on your site, wherever, sales pages?
Yeah, we think a lot about internal linking. So hub pages, like you mentioned, it really depends on what type of site it is, because it could be, other relevant products. If it's an e-commerce site, internal links. We do breadcrumbs. So we're thinking a lot about internal linking, and then we're also improving links, which is if you can get a link to one of these pages that is built for authority, you can reach out to whoever posted that link and ask them to add links to one of the money pages. It really depends on how you do it, but we look a lot at let's just generate some links, and then we can reach out to them and ask them to improve links by adding some more links to money pages. to their articles. And that's not always possible depending on what your money pages look like,
Right.
but we're always thinking along those lines.
Yeah, I love that. I guess I never thought of optimizing the actual link itself. Reach back out and see if anything else is possible. Now, I do have one question from the chat here. This is from Katie. I'm working with a new client. Should we be adapting their current online content in line to a new SEO strategy, or let that go and start fresh?
Wow, that's a big question. This is the type of question I love to dig into. I would need some more context. I mean, Katie, you've got my email address here. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk about it, but I'll talk about it kind of broadly. You could imagine a scenario where they have a lot of useful content. And the way I think about useful content is whatever customer they're going after, whatever customer persona they're going after, what questions, what information is that customer looking for when they're making a buying decision? And then that could just be the keyword targeted content. So we leave that up there and we may not need to optimize it at all. Instead, we're building authority content that's designed to build the authority of the website with all of the things that I was talking about here today. That's one scenario. There's another scenario where they've just got the wrong content and it's not getting indexed, it's spammy, and we really do need to get rid of it and replace it with content that Google is willing to index. That would be pretty extreme, but I've seen it. So it's likely that the site that you're talking about is somewhere in the middle, and I'm happy to take a look at it with you.
Well, perfect. Katie, go ahead and reach out to Dale afterwards. This is actually a really good question from Stephanie, and I think it's super relevant to this audience at HOTHCon today. So she asks, when it comes to purpose-driven content, how important is it to actually have niche experience, to know the industry and to actually use that knowledge to connect with your audience?
Well, I think it is important, but I think it's more important for the keyword targeted content where you need that niche experience and knowledge so that the content will rank and convert. But on the authority side, where you might be worried more about backlinks and engagement, then it might be important. It really depends on who you're trying to connect to. So having enough knowledge to build content that would resonate with whoever you're trying to build content partnerships with, so that it's connected content, that's what matters. And that depends on the market. I mean, that could be a number. It could be jewelry designers. It could be 3D printing hobbyists. It could be, but what does that need? What does that experience need to be in order to generate content partnerships?
Awesome. And last question here from Linksley. What's your favorite keyword tool?
So I feel like I use all of them. I'm like on a daily basis. I'll use Ahrefs, SEMrush. I'll dive into Search Console and look at multiple websites to understand what keywords are driving traffic. And I'll look at the search terms report in a bunch of Google Ads campaigns. I like search terms reports in Google Ads because it has a conversion column, so I can see what keywords are converting. I think that's important. And then I'll read, like if we're working with a client, I'll read everything I can on their website if there's not like a million pages on the site, and just like highlight words that I think are relevant. So I think that's one thing that not a lot of people do. And then I'll look at competing content and I'll just read it all and highlight every word that may or may not have shown up using the keyword research tools. But those if you have one keyword research tool like Moz or Ahrefs or SEMrush, that will get you 80 or 90% of the way there. So that's what most people do.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you very much, Dale. That is all the questions we have for now. Again, if you have any more, feel free to reach out. His email is right there. So thank you very much for your time, and we'll talk to you later.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All righty. Have a great one.